And after many years of constant warfare, the president is bringing our troops home from Syria. But as One America's Pearson explains, Democrats have other plans for Syria's future.
In President Trump's America, no matter what he does, the Democrats are ready to fight him at every turn. As a result, it looks like the status quo has shifted. Now that Trump is pulling out of Syria, the peace-loving liberals are ready for war. It wasn't long ago the Democrats were known as the anti-war party. But since the Obama administration, the left has pushed harder than ever for intervention, escalation, and all-out destruction of other countries, no matter how many Syrians and U.S. lives it costs. Libya and Iraq are two prime examples where instead of peace and prosperity, U.S. intervention created failed countries rife with crime, poverty, and war, ideal conditions for the rise of the Islamic State. For President Trump, watching that happen all over again simply wasn't an option.
We've been fighting for a long time in Syria. I've been president for almost 2 years, and we've really stepped it up. And we have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. We've taken back the land, and now it's time for our troops to come back home.
Yet now that the president has called for an end to the war and suffering in Syria, the Democrats and even his own party are leaping into action to keep the U.S. fighting.
This morning, the administration announced the intent to remove all American troops, not a large presence, but all American troops from Syria. I want to be clear, as I've tried to be all day about this. I believe it is a catastrophic mistake that will have grave consequences for the United States, for our interests, and for our allies in the months and years to come.
That's a far cry from Rubio's own statements back in 2013, when he came out in opposition against U.S. troops in Syria.
While I have long argued forcefully for engagement in empowering the Syrian people, I have never supported the use of military force, of U.S. military force in this conflict, and I still don't. I remain unconvinced that the use of force proposed here will work.
Republicans or Democrats, whatever President Trump tries to do, they oppose him. So President Trump must go it alone as he continues his promise to put American interests first. Thus far, there has been zero evidence, none whatsoever, that President Assad attacked his own people with chemical weapons. Not even the International Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons was able to find any proof, though they did admit that anti-Assad terrorist fighters kindly provided them with some chemical samples. During the war that began under President Obama's watch, Syria went from one of the safest, most prosperous countries in the world to a decimated war zone. Over 500,000 people have died under wars perpetrated by Democrat leadership, while Obama's drone strikes and crippling sanctions have cut off food and medical supplies to the innocent civilians who need them most. So far, the war has cost Syria nearly $400 billion in lost economic productivity and in damage to the country's infrastructure. Not only that, but under Obama and his Democrat supporters, the CIA and Pentagon began covert programs to arm, fund, and train terrorist forces in Syria, including the Islamic State. The program was so elaborate it cost U.S. taxpayers over $500 million a year just to give weapons to terrorist groups. This is Obama's Syria, the Syria that Democrats have been fighting for, and it's one that President Trump has vowed must end. The Syria of today is very different. President Trump has cut off funding for terrorist groups, including the Free Syrian Army and the White Helmets, and is putting an end to the airstrikes that have repeatedly targeted and killed Syrian soldiers in places like Deir ez-Zor. That's given President Assad's forces a chance to recover, and along with help from the Russian military, Syria is nearly restored to full government control. Only a small handful of isolated towns remain under rebel control. President Trump set out to defeat the Islamic State, and that's precisely what's happened. These are the scenes in Syria under President Trump. Free people gathering in the streets, celebrating Christmas for the first time in years. Markets rebuilt, towns and cities restored, and people who were forced to flee are finally returning home. But Democrats, outraged President Trump might actually be successful, are pushing back hard.
So our boys, our young women, our men, they're all coming back, and they're coming back now. We won, and that's the way we want it, and that's the way they want it.
The people of Syria have spoken. They elected President Assad and are thriving in areas under government control. The years of warfare are coming to an end, and under President Trump, life is finally getting back to normal. Pearson Sharp, One America News.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.